Good morning and welcome. It is 10 o'clock. It is the first day of August 2021. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM, and it is day one of RPG A Day 2021. For the next 31 days, we are going to be exploring multiple aspects of the role-playing hobby and answering some prompts. They're not questions, they're prompts. And prompts can be answered in any way: art, singing, vlogs, blogs, whatever. And the very first prompt for RPG A Day is scenario. Scenario. The dictionary defines scenario as a written outline of a movie, novel, or stage work giving details of the plot and individual scenes. Role-playing defines scenario as the thing you think that's going to happen as opposed to the thing that the player characters actually do. And it's a huge difference. We've talked a lot about, is the GM a storyteller? Some people say yes, the GM is a storyteller. Other people say no, the GM is a scenario teller. Both are correct. A lot of people say, they plan and rehearse their adventures. And other people like me say, well, I don't have plans. I have ideas because I never know how the players are going to react. And I think it's important to understand that if you're telling a scenario, you're telling a story, it's not a linear story in our hobby like it is in a movie or a play. It is a multiple path scenario because you really don't know what your audience, your players, is going to do when they encounter the various beats in your story. So you have to have that open-mindedness and that preparedness to run with it, and while still sort of keeping some semblance of what you think you wanted to have happen to move the story along, while also allowing them the freedom to explore the world to some extent, or at least giving them the illusion they have the freedom to explore the world, all the while you're trying to sort of get them back on some semblance of the track to keep the scenario going. But you have to have open-mindedness. The importance is you can't be locked in to the scenario. And far too many times, both in gaming and real life, I have seen people just sort of lose it because the audience doesn't respond to the way they think the story should go. So as an educator, we are supposed to follow curriculum, and we're supposed to have lesson plans, things that we expect to happen during the day, during the month, during the year. That is generally how the school system wants to work. In reality, that is impossible. You cannot have lesson plans, and curriculum is just sort of more like an idea, especially if you're dealing with littles like I normally do. I mean, I work with preschool and pre-K and kindergartners, and you never know how they're going to react. So you could come in with a lesson plan of what you think is going to happen. And this is a true story. So I was working at a school, and the school was very rigid, and I wasn't. And that was often a situation where I would bump heads with the senior teacher because I didn't have lesson plans. I had ideas, and I expected things to go wrong, probably from my years of being a DM and treating children much the same way you treat players. Is like, I don't know what they're going to do. I can have an idea of what I want to happen, but I also have to be open-minded enough that if things go a different way, I can run in with it and turn it into an educational experience. But the senior teacher in this class I was working with was very rigid. Things had to follow her plan. So she had a very specific plan for this one day at the school that she wanted the kindergartners to follow, lesson plan, curriculum. Unfortunately, this was the exact same day the phone company was on campus replacing all the wires. So there was this big yellow truck with this gigantic, I don't know if you've ever seen these gigantic spool of phone wires. I mean, this spool is at least 10 feet tall by probably 8-10 feet wide, probably a couple 100 pounds. It's just this huge, giant truck with this huge, giant spool of wire. So, of course, every kid was fascinated by this giant truck and all the construction trucks and this giant spool of wire. And that's all they wanted to talk about. That's all they wanted to engage in was what's going on? Who are these people? What are those trucks? What is that big giant thing? Can we go see the trucks? Can we go play with the trucks? Because, you know, most kids love trucks and construction and toys. And here's this construction going on and all this noise and all these people and all these cool looking things to the eyes of the kid. And I ran with it. I knew that the teacher had this very specific scenario in mind that she wanted to happen, but there was no way she was getting these kids back on track. They were just too excited and too focused on what was going on outside the window. And the more she tried to get them back on the track of what she thought should happen, the more they rebelled, because the more they just became stubborn about what's outside the window. And here's me trying to engage with them, make what's outside the window into a lesson, while she's still so focused on what she thinks could happen, that railroad of the scenario of what she thinks could happen, that she's not allowing herself to see the possibilities that her audience is going in a different direction and how she can use that. So she broke down. She had a breakdown. She literally left the class crying because she could not deal with the fact that the kids weren't doing what she wanted. She totally had what we call our table flipping moment. While I, being much more open-minded, being much more about, you know, enrichment curriculum and being much more like, okay, I mean, the second I walked in the door and I saw the construction, I knew that's what the kids are going to talk about. So already in my mind, I'm like, okay, what kind of construction dramatic play can I do? What kind of lesson plan about construction I can do? What construction related books are in the classroom that we can read? You know, are there any toy construction trucks I can get out and put in the sandbox? You know, is there a way I can take them to look at one of the trucks, you know, supervised if the guy lets me, you know? So I was already thinking of all sorts of different ways to incorporate the kids into what I knew was going to fascinate them, because I knew there was no way they were going to want to follow her curriculum for the day. But she was unable to do that, so she broke down. And that relates to gaming in the same way. As a scenario teller, as a game master, you have to be open-minded enough to take what they do if they don't do what you want to. Now, here's an example of a game. We're playing a game, a space game, and the DM had a very specific thing that he wanted to happen. Something about, I don't remember the exact plot, but basically it was we needed to deliver something to the Russian mobsters and get into debt to the Russian mobsters. What he didn't expect was we came up with an alternate scenario. We were like, why should we give this to these guys who are threatening us? Why don't we set up ambush and just kill them? I mean, there's a reward for them, probably. They're Russian mobsters on this spaceship. They're threatening us, you know. They want us to deliver this highly doubtful thing. And then, you know, we're going to end up getting into debt with them. We're going to get into trouble with the law. Why don't we just see if there's a bounty for these guys and then just lure them into a trap and kill them? And he had not prepared for us to go so off his plan. He was so focused on what he thought that would happen that he kept pushing against us whenever we tried to do something different. Till it became at the point where we're butting heads. And the more he tried to force the players to get on track, whether consciously or unconsciously, the more us players rebelled against what he wanted to do, and to the point where he lost it. He table flipped, he stormed out. His brain could just not see, how can I turn this to my advantage? How can I turn what they're doing into something that will move the story I want to tell along? How can I use the trucks that are outside the window of the classroom to become a lesson plan to help move what I need to happen for the day along, because I don't need the kids just yelling and screaming and staring out the window all day. So how can I incorporate what they're now into while still stay on my responsibilities as a teacher? How can you, as a scenario teller, take what they're doing, respond to it, incorporate it into the story you're telling, but still always in the back of your mind, how are you going to spin this to get them to where you need to go? If there's 3 things that need to happen in your adventure, or 5 things to happen that needs to happen in your adventure for using the 5-room dungeon, 5-room scenario philosophy. But I usually figure there's 3 things that need to happen. But those things don't need to happen in any order or any specific place. You know, if they need to get something from point A to point B, then just don't become focused on what point A and point B is like this DM did or that teacher did. Instead, just go, okay, I need to get from point A to point B because I want to tell the story I want to tell next week. And in order for that to happen, but they're doing something different. So how can I take my idea, incorporate it into what they're doing, so I get them sort of back on track, sort of focused, but in a different way, but still what I need to happen, i.e. control, educate, take care of the kids, follow the, you know, lunch, nap, timetable, or in this case, follow the plot of getting out of debt to the Russians, and still say, okay, this is what my players are interested right now. How can I use this to my advantage? How can I use what they're doing to my advantage? How can I use the NPCs they're incorporating with to my advantage? How can I get them to where I need them to be, more or less, to continue the story? How could she have gotten those kids to where she needed them to be in order to do the basic responsibilities she had as a teacher, as opposed to just being so locked into what she thought had to happen that she broke down? That is the importance of understanding that we are scenario tellers. We're not storytellers, but we are responding to what our players do and incorporating their choices to keep spinning the story forward to get where we kind of want them to be. And, you know, the conclusion to the story is, while she went out crying and screaming and lost it and eventually lost her job, I was able to get the kids under relative control, create a organized lesson idea for the first half of the day from when they first saw the trucks to lunchtime, where I was able to use their fascination with the trucks to create a lesson idea. You know, dramatic play, arts and craft, stories, videos. I wasn't able to take them to the truck because of insurance, but we were able to go to the fence and look at the trucks and talk to the people through the fence and watch them until the noise started bothering the kids. And by lunchtime, they just were, you know, so happy that they got to do this and so exhausted from just all the play and all the interaction that after lunch and after rest time, they were more willing to say, okay, let's watch this video about spelling. Okay, let's do this, you know, cooking project we're supposed to do. Because I incorporated what they were fascinated with into the general idea of things I needed to happen during the day to get them to where I needed them to be by the end of the day. And that is the big difference between being focused on that linear railroad idea of that too many DMs have of things that have to happen, as opposed to that idea of, I think there's things that kind of need to happen, but I can sort of move them around because I see my players are doing different things. As long as what the players are doing are not totally destructive to your world. Let's end it on that. As long as they're not murdering NPCs, burning down buildings, and basically being murder hobo Andrew assholes. In that case, you know what? Just throw 10,000 orcs at them and kill the fucks because they don't want to play the game. They just want to piss on your table. But hopefully you won't have to deal with asshat murder hobo Andrew players. And your players and you can work together to tell the story. You can take what they're interested in along with what you think you need to have happen in order to get them to the end of the day and incorporate both together. At least that's what I think, and maybe I'm wrong. You let me know. Comment down below. Please take part in RPG A Day 2021. It's absolutely free. I hope you appreciate this content. If you have anything you want to talk about, please let me know. Otherwise, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Help me hit 1,000 subs by 2025. Until then, RPG A Day, August 1st. Remember, it's my birthday on August 4th. I will talk to you later. Lesson plan versus lesson idea. Or, I'm just a great teacher.